everyone, it's Destiny, and today we're going to be discussing the upcoming 3.6 character banners and which character you should go for. I'll be going over each of their kits, some teams, and their overall value. Before we get into today's video, I'd love to know if you are considering pulling any of the characters in version 3.6 or potentially skipping. Lastly, if you enjoy videos like these, consider subscribing to see more content from me, leave a like to support the video, and now let's get straight into it. Let's begin with the first half of version 3.6, which will feature Evernight and the Herta. Starting off with Evernight, Evernight will be an Ice Remembrance character who enjoys being alongside other Remembrance characters as she can provide nice team-wide buffs, which the more memosprite characters on the team, the bigger the buffs. Evernight also takes advantage of a stack mechanic referred to as Memoria, which is important for her memosprite's damage output. Evernight's skill will consume a percentage of her current HP to summon her memosprite Evey and increase the crit damage of all ally memosprites for 2 turns. The duration will decrease by 1 at the start of Evernight's turn. If Evey's already on the field though, you'll restore a percentage of its max HP instead. When Evernight's skill is used, you'll gain points of Memoria. Memoria will gradually increase the damage dealt by her memosprite Evey, and after reaching 16 or more Memoria stacks, Evey will immediately take action and explode, dealing damage onto all enemies. Upon disappearing, Evernight's speed will also increase. Evernight benefits from accumulating a bunch of Memoria and Evey exploding frequently, as this will result in a lot of frequent damage being dealt. Plus, whenever Evernight or Evey's HP drops, you'll gain points of Memoria there as well. This can come from enemies attacking you, Evernight being able to consume her own HP, and even cases of certain light cones assisting with the draining of HP of allies. For example, Hyacine's signature light cone. As for Evernight's ultimate, Evey will be summoned if they weren't already on the field and deal damage onto all enemies. Evernight and Evey will then enter an enhanced state referred to as Darkest Riddle after using Evernight's ultimate, which this enhanced state will have 2 charges. One charge is used after Evey explodes. This enhanced state will increase the damage dealt by Evernight and Evey, and also inflict a vulnerability debuff onto enemies. Additionally, after Evernight uses her enhanced skill, she will gain additional Memoria during the Darkest Riddle state. Evey will also change colors during this state, becoming a more red and black color. Lastly, after using her technique, Evernight will increase all allies' memosprite crit damage and gain points of Memoria. Additionally, it is worth noting when it comes to Evey's attacks, when you aren't at 16 or more Memoria stacks, rather than Evey exploding, it'll use a water gun-like attack onto an enemy and assist with gaining Memoria. When it comes to team building with Evernight, you can consider using Hypercarry or dual DPS. Starting with Hypercarry, this would essentially just be your supports amplifying Evernight's damage. Some supports you can consider using alongside Evernight can be Remembrance Trailblazer, as they are a free-to-play option that allows Evernight to take advantage of the true damage buff thanks to mem support. And since they do have a memosprite, this will benefit Evernight even further, due to her being able to provide buffs based on how many characters have memosprites on the team. More supports you can consider would be Tribby, as she provides all-type res pent for the team, as well as inflicts a vulnerability debuff onto enemies. When her zone is active, Tribby can also hold the Dance 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 light cone. You can consider Cypher alongside Evernight, as she will inflict all enemies with a vulnerability debuff by simply being on the field, and she will also record the damage the team deals onto enemies, which allows Cypher to deal immense damage with her ultimate and can assist with finishing off some of the enemies you are facing. Additionally, depending on what light cone you use on Cypher, you can inflict even more debuffs onto enemies, which will further Evernight's damage onto them and just the team overall. You can use Silverwolf, as she can decrease all enemies' defenses with her ultimate. She can implant ice weakness onto an enemy and lower their resistances, as well as inflict numerous other debuffs onto enemies, and similar to Cypher, depending on what light cone you use, you can inflict additional debuffs, which will further Evernight's damage. More nihility options can be Payla for the defense reduction, and she can also reduce enemies' ice resistance at E4, which benefits Evernight as she is an ice character. Raw May can provide damage buffs, speed buffs, all-type res pen, and so on. There's multiple supports you can consider for an Evernight Hypercarry team, and for the sustain option, Hyacine will be an excellent option due to her having a memosprite, dealing her own damage as well as buffing the HP of allies. If you have Hyacine's Light Cone, this will allow you to get even more Memoria for Evernight as well. But if you don't have Hyacine, you can consider using a character like Gallagher, which is a great 4-star sustain option. As for dual DPS Evernight, one of her primary team members would be Castorice with the similar supports as mentioned earlier. Castorice drains the team's HP, which benefits Evernight gaining Memoria, and Evernight can also assist with gaining Castorice New Blood as well. Evernight will also inflict a vulnerability debuff onto enemies with her Darkest Riddle state from her ultimate, which will benefit the team's damage output. I will likely experiment with some fun teams with Evernight as well, and if you want to see some showcases for our upcoming characters featuring Evernight as well as the new Dan Heng, consider subscribing to see more content from me. Now when it comes to Evernight's value, she could be a nice option for those looking for a new damage dealer and like her playstyle, and for those who wish to use her as a new character either alongside Castorice, due to the synergy they have with one another, or just having another new main damage dealer on their account that can take advantage of the hypercarry playstyle. Now that we've gone over Evernight, let's discuss the Herta. The Herta is an Ice Erudition character who revolves around being paired alongside another Erudition character, which will allow her to take advantage of her interpretation stack mechanic more effectively, gain energy faster for her ultimate, as well as provide the team buffs by having a secondary Erudition character on the team. Interpretation can stack up to 42, and teammates will be able to assist with stacking interpretation onto enemies by attacking them. Erudition characters on the team will be able to stack additional interpretation stacks onto enemies. And overall, when it comes to Herta's interpretation stacks, you'll want to get as close as possible to 42 stacks on an enemy when you use your enhanced skill, as each stack of interpretation will increase the damage multiplier, and this will actually further increase if you do have another Erudition character alongside Herta. And if the primary target's interpretation stacks are at 42, the ice damage dealt by Herta will increase by 50% until the end of the attack. Additionally, a nice perk Herta has within her kit is that at the start of each wave, 25 stacks of interpretation are applied to a random enemy, which this does prioritize elite enemies or above. When enemies with interpretation leave the field or are defeated, their interpretation stacks will actually be transferred to another enemy. Once again, prioritizing elite enemies are higher. Herta being able to inflict 25 stacks at the start of each wave heavily assists with getting closer to 42 stacks, and enemies that are defeated on their field, their stacks being able to transfer to another enemy is mentioned. This will also assist with getting closer to 42 stacks after your first enhanced skill that you use within each wave. As for how Herta gets her enhanced skill, she'll have to use her ultimate, which does have a hefty 220 energy cost. So while this energy cost is very high, this trace will allow teammates to actually help with regenerating energy for Herta, as every target attacked will regenerate 3 fixed energy for Herta, and you could do this for a maximum of 5 targets. This results in upwards to 15 fixed energy. Characters with high AoE attacking frequency will be able to nicely assist with generating energy for Herta, which can consist of course, the Erudition character alongside Herta, but also sustains that have high attacking frequency. For example, Linksha, as she could take advantage of her skills, ultimates, follow-ups, and so on. Once you use Herta's ultimate, she'll advance herself forward by 100%, which allows her to immediately attack again, and her ultimate will grant her a stack of inspiration, which lets Herta now take advantage of her enhanced skill. Herta's attack will also increase after using her ultimate. It's also worth noting that for every stack of interpretation inflicted onto enemies throughout battle, Herta will gain 1 stack of the answer, which can stack up to 99 times, and every stack will increase her ultimate's damage multiplier by 1%. The answer stacks will remain for the entire battle. As for Herta's additional benefits, her trace from Beyond the Veil will increase all allies' crit damage by 80% if another Erudition character is on the team, and Herta herself of course can take advantage of this as well. Lastly, Herta's technique is nice for treasure hunting, as she'll reveal up to 3 basic treasures on the map, and her technique is also very nice for simulated universe as well, since she'll be able to inflict true damage onto enemies equal to a percentage of their HP, which can assist with making the mode a bit easier. Overall, when it comes to Big Herta's playstyle, she relies on team members to assist with giving her energy for her ultimate usage, as well as assisting with stacking interpretation onto enemies so that Herta is able to deal massive damage onto them with her enhanced skill. As for team synergies with the Herta, she could take advantage of very nice free-to-play options as well as premium options. As for free-to-play Herta teams, it'll consist of using her alongside Serval or Little Herta, Remembrance Trailblazer, and then a sustain of your choice, depending on who you have. Some favorable options though would be Lingsha, Wuhua, Aventurine, Gallagher can work as a more budget-friendly option, and so on. Serval with the passkey Lycone, which is a 3-star Lycone, will be able to use her ultimate frequently, which can assist with stacking more stacks of interpretation onto enemies, as well as gaining Herta back more energy. Remembrance Trailblazer is good for advancing forward Herta, as well as providing Herta mem support, so that Herta can now take advantage of true damage. As for premium options, you'd be looking at Anaxa, Tribi, Jade, and Lingsha as amazing options to pair alongside the Herta. Anaxa will implant every weakness onto enemies, and with qualitative disclosure inflicted onto enemies, he'll now be able to have higher attacking frequency as well. Tribi can provide the ult-type res pen buff from her skill, and the field from her ultimate, which will now make enemies take more damage from the team. Tribi can synergize well with the Herta due to her gaining energy as well from allies attacking enemies similar to the Herta, and Tribi's follow-up attacks can assist with gaining back more energy for the Herta too, plus Tribi with Dance 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 can now advance forward the team as well. Jade can nicely hit all enemies with her follow-up attacks, which allows her to regain energy for the Herta at a nice rate. Lingsha has high AoE attacking frequency with her skill, ultimate follow-ups, and so on, which can assist with Jade attacking more frequently if Jade makes Lingsha the debt collector, as well as regain more energy for the Herta and Tribi. You can also use other supports as well on the Herta team, such as Robin, Rame, Hela, and much more. When it comes to the Herta's value, she's a powerful option when it comes to AoE-centric fights, which near her release was very frequent in Memory of Chaos, and she also does excellent in Pure Fiction as well. Now when it comes to the second half of version 3.6, we will get a banner for the new Dan Heng and Anaxa. Starting with Dan Heng, he will actually be a free character that everyone can acquire, which at that point can make the potential for going for his signature light code or first Eidolon a consideration. For Dan Heng in particular, I'll be able to go over that more near his release, as his Eidolon details and signature Lycone details aren't officially out just yet. But we can still go over his kit regardless from what we do know so far. Dan Heng will be a physical preservation character, and starting off with his skill, he'll designate one ally as the bondmate and summon Soul Dragon for them, which this now counts as that ally having a summon. Dan Heng will also provide all allies with a shield that can offset damage equal to a percentage of his attack for 3 turns when using his skill. When Soul Dragon takes action, it'll dispel a debuff from all allies and provide a shield. Dan Heng's ultimate will deal damage onto all enemies and enhance Soul Dragon, which will now allow Soul Dragon to deal a follow-up attack onto all enemies and build even more shields for the team when it takes action. This enhanced state will last for 2 Soul Dragon attacks. Dan Heng's technique will allow the character who initiates combat to become the bondmate without using any skill points. The bondmate having Soul Dragon as their summon can allow you to take advantage of Sunday's buffing capabilities even further now, as Sunday buffs an ally further if they have a summon. Dan Heng will also be able to provide an attack buff for the bondmate as well based on his own attack. Dan Heng's looking to be a very nice sustain option for accounts, and I'll be uploading more content on him as we approach his release. Next up, we have Anaxa. Anaxa is a Wind Erudition character who focuses on inflicting numerous weaknesses onto enemies, which does result in him being able to deal increased damage onto enemies as well, and being able to attack enemies very frequently. When it comes to Anaxa's basic attack, he'll inflict damage onto a single enemy. Anaxa's skill will deal damage to a single enemy, and then there will be 4 additional instances of damage which prioritize bouncing to enemy targets that have not been hit yet by this instance of his skill. Anaxa's skill being a bounce attack is great in the case of dealing with an enemy in a single target scenario, as he'll be able to hit the enemy initially with his skill, and then the rest of the 4 additional instances of damage will also hit that enemy. It's also worth noting that his skill will deal increased damage depending on how many enemies are on the field, As it mentions, for each attackable enemy on the field, Anaxa's skill has its damage dealt increased by 20%. As for Anaxa's weakness implant, which is a huge part of his kit, whenever Anaxa lands one hit onto an enemy, he'll inflict a random weakness onto them for 3 turns, with a priority of a weakness that is not already inflicted onto them. And once an enemy has 5 weaknesses on them, they'll be afflicted with the qualitative disclosure state, which Anaxa will deal 30% increased damage to enemies afflicted with qualitative disclosure. Additionally, when Anaxa uses his basic attacker skill now on an enemy inflicted with qualitative disclosure, he'll now be able to deal 1 additional instance of his skill onto targets. This additional skill does not consume any skill points, and he'll also gain energy from this additional instance of his skill as well. This basically means he can skill twice in a row and you only have to use 1 skill point to do this. Or if you're using a basic attack, you'll gain a skill point and you'll still be able to take advantage of that additional instance of his skill, which is very nice in scenarios where you may be low on skill points. This results in Anaxa being able to attack very frequently now, as well as regenerate energy quickly. Let's say he was on a team with a character that can advance him forward. This now results in you being able to deal 2 skills in a row, advance forward Anaxa, and then being able to deal another 2 skills in a row, which allows him to have high attacking frequency overall. Now, when it comes to Anaxa's ultimate, he'll attack all enemies on the field and inflict the sublimation state onto every enemy on the field, which will now have every weakness inflicted onto them. And if they do not have control resistance, they are unable to take action in the sublimation state, which this state will last until the start of that target's turn. So this is just a nice way to ensure that the enemy has all of the weaknesses inflicted onto them. And then for Anaxa's technique, he'll inflict the terrified state onto enemies. Terrified enemies will flee in a direction away from Anaxa, and after entering battle, Anaxa applies 1 weakness of the attacker's type to every enemy target, lasting for 3 turns. As for Anaxa's traces, this is where he has even more potential for furthering his damage output, and also some supportive potential as well. Anaxa's trace qualitative shift allows Anaxa's damage to ignore 4% of an enemy's defense for every weakness inflicted onto them, upward to 7 weaknesses. Anaxa is easily able to inflict all weaknesses onto enemies with this kit, which as a result can allow him to take advantage of ignoring 28% of enemies' defenses. This trace is useful for furthering Anaxa's damage potential, and as for Anaxa's trace imperative hiatus, based on the number of Erudition characters on the team, one of the following effects will be triggered in battle. When there's only 1 Erudition character on the team, Anaxa's crit damage will increase by 140%, which essentially means if Anaxa is the only Erudition character on the team, he can take advantage of this 140% additional crit damage effect, which is useful for hypercarry Anaxa. If there are at least 2 Erudition characters on the team though, then all allies' damage dealt will increase by 50%. For Anaxa's last trace, Roaming Signifier, whenever Anaxa uses a basic attack, he'll additionally regenerate 10 energy, and at the start of a turn, if there are no enemies with the qualitative disclosure state, you will immediately regenerate 30 energy. When it comes to team synergies, Anaxa can be used as a hypercarry or dual DPS. Hypercarry Anaxa has progressively been getting stronger, with new supports releasing, the latest being Svirdra. Svirdra allows Anaxa to use 4 skills in a row with her duplicate skill mechanic, and provides useful buffs for Anaxa as well, consisting of attack, speed, crit damage for his skill, and ult-type res pen. Sunday is also another excellent support, as he can provide Anaxa crit rate, crit damage, damage boost, advance him forward by 100%, provide him with more energy, and overall amplify his damage output further, and allows him to attack very frequently. As for other supports, you can consider Remembrance Trailblazer for the true damage buff for mem support, Robin for team-wide attack buffs, damage buffs, team-wide action advance. You can use Tribby with Anaxa for the ult-type res pen buff she'll provide with her skill, and the vulnerability debuff she inflicts onto enemies with her ultimate, which will further Anaxa's damage output. You can use Ting Yun for the attack and damage buffs, as well as the energy she'll provide Anaxa. There's also Bronya, Cypher, Ruame, Pela, and so on. As for dual DPS Anaxa, you can use him with the Herta, of course, and a fun synergy can be alongside Himiko, as he can help with implanting fire weakness onto all enemies. Anaxa can also nicely utilize a free-to-play light cone option, and now that we've gone over each character, which one would be the best to pull for? I would say when it comes to the 3.6 banners, it's primarily DPS options to pick from, and then considering whether you want Dan Heng's Eidolons or his signature light cone, as he is going to be free. For our DPS options, I typically would say to consider the newest damage dealer first rather than reruns. In this case, it would be Evernight, who can work as a hypercarry or alongside Castorice and can potentially get even stronger in the future alongside Cyrene, as Evernight enjoys being alongside Remembrance characters based on her buffs getting stronger based on the number of memosprites on the team. If you aren't interested in Evernight though and are determined to get a new damage dealer between the Herta and Anaxa, then I would lean more toward Anaxa, as he is doing very well in endgame content and also has a nice free-to-play Lycone option you can use. Additionally, if you did pull Saridra or have some of the supports I mentioned earlier to use alongside him, you can make a pretty powerful Anaxa team on your account. Now, if none of these characters interest you though, then you can wait until version 3.7, which will have Cyrene and different reruns and beyond. And I would love to know which character you're going to be pulling for, or if you're likely going to skip all of version 3.6. Another piece of advice I would give is if you're in the second half of version 3.6 and you're a bit unsure about pulling, I would wait until the 3.7 live stream to know more details about Cyrene and also more details on the confirmed reruns to determine if you rather pull in 3.7 instead. That'll be all from me though. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, consider subscribing to see more content from me. Leave a like to support the video, and I hope to see you all next time. Peace.